On an October morning in 2023, the Midland Correctional Facility awoke to another day of routine. The sound of electronic locks echoed through the corridors, mingling with the muffled voices of guards and the metallic clank of keys. The medium-security prison, designed to hold 200 inmates, housed men convicted of crimes ranging in severity from theft to armed robbery. Adam Rivera opened his eyes at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before the official wake-up time. The 3-by-4-meter cell he shared with his bunkmate was bathed in the usual semi-darkness. The 32-year-old man had already served 4 years of an 8-year sentence for armed robbery at a gas station. That morning in November 2019 changed his life forever. A desperate attempt to get money for his sick mother's treatment resulted in long years of imprisonment. Rivera got up from the lower bunk, trying not to wake his neighbor. His movements were smooth and careful, the result of years of adapting to life in a confined space. At 180 centimeters tall and with a strong build, he looked like a former construction worker. His hands, covered with small scars from working with tools, were now accustomed to a completely different activity: survival in a prison environment. At Midland, Adam earned a reputation as someone who was best not to mess with, but also not to be afraid of. He never sought conflict, but he didn't back down when it found him. Other inmates respected him for his honesty and integrity. Rivera did not participate in prison gangs, preferring to keep to himself, but he maintained good relations with influential people among the convicts. The sound of a siren announced the start of the day. In a few minutes, the cells would open, and the usual routine would begin. Breakfast in the dining room, work in the laundry room, where Adam had been working for the past 2 years, then an hour of walking in the yard, and evening confinement to the cells. Every day repeated itself with mechanical precision, creating the illusion of stability in a world where any small thing could have serious consequences. At the same time, Stan Connor was passing through the metal detector at the prison entrance. The 29-year-old guard had been working at Midland for 4 years, and every morning began the same way: checking equipment, briefing colleagues, and receiving assignments for the day. His section was Block B, where medium-security prisoners, including Adam Rivera, were held. Connor got the job after leaving the army. His military service in Afghanistan had left its mark. He had learned to be alert, read people, and anticipate danger. These skills proved invaluable in a prison environment. Sten was of average height, athletic build, with short hair and an attentive gaze. His colleagues valued his professionalism and ability to remain calm in critical situations. Connor's family lived 20 miles from the prison in a small town where everyone knew each other. His father, Thomas Connor, had served in the army for 30 years and raised his son in the strict traditions of discipline and order. His mother worked as a school teacher and dreamed that Stan would find a safer and more prestigious job. But his salary as a security guard allowed him to help his parents and save money for the future. Captain Ron Hayes had spent 23 years in the correctional system. Starting as a simple guard, he had climbed the career ladder and now headed the entire security service at Midland. Hayes knew every corner of the prison and every problematic inmate by sight. His philosophy was simple: maintain order at all costs, while respecting the law and human rights. At 7:30 a.m., Stan Connor's shift began. He received his keys and radio, checked his equipment, and headed for Block B. The prison corridors were flooded with neon light, creating a cold, uncomfortable atmosphere. The beige-painted walls were covered with numerous scratches and scuffs, traces of thousands of touches from the hands of inmates and staff. Stan's first interaction with Adam took place during morning roll call, the procedure for releasing prisoners from their cells for breakfast. Connor stood at the control post, watching the convicts line up. Adam came out of cell 247 and fell into line as usual, without drawing attention to himself. "Rivera, stop!" Stan called out, noticing a stain on the prisoner's uniform. At Midland, appearance was strictly monitored. Any violation of the dress code could result in disciplinary action. Adam turned and approached the guard. "Is there a problem, Officer Connor?" he asked calmly. Rivera knew all the guards by name. It helped avoid conflict and showed respect for the staff. "There's a stain on your shirt. It could be considered a violation," Stan explained, pointing to a small stain on the prisoner's chest. Adam looked down and nodded. "I see. It's from working in the laundry yesterday. I didn't notice it last night. Can I change after breakfast?" Connor thought for a moment. Technically, he could write a report and send Rivera to disciplinary isolation. But the stain was small, and the prisoner had shown respect and a willingness to correct the situation. "All right, change after breakfast and report to me. Next time, check your uniform more carefully." "I will, Officer Connor. Thank you for your understanding," Adam replied and returned to line up. This brief conversation was typical of the interactions between staff and inmates at Midland. The system worked on mutual respect and strict adherence to the rules. Guards like Stan understood that excessive harshness could lead to tension and conflict, while reasonable flexibility helped maintain order. The prison hierarchy among inmates was complex and unwritten. At the top were those convicted of serious crimes who enjoyed authority among their fellow inmates. Adam occupied a special position. He did not seek leadership, but his opinion carried weight. Other inmates often turned to him for advice or help in resolving conflicts. The laundry room where Rivera worked had its own atmosphere. Here, prisoners could communicate relatively freely while performing the monotonous work of washing and sorting laundry. Adam proved himself to be a reliable worker. He was never late, performed his tasks well, and did not cause problems for his supervisors. Stan Connor patrolled his section every 30 minutes, checking on the situation in the cells and common areas. He knew the habits of most of the inmates and could anticipate potential problems. Midland had a zero-tolerance policy on violence. Any conflict was immediately suppressed, and those involved received disciplinary action. After lunch, Adam approached Stan's post in clean uniform, as he had promised that morning. "Officer Connor, I've changed as you requested," he reported. Stan looked up from his paperwork and nodded. "Good, Rivera. I appreciate you keeping your word." "In prison, a word is all we have," Adam replied with a slight smile. Connor thought about those words for a moment. In his 4 years on the job, he had met many inmates. Some were angry and aggressive, others were broken by their circumstances. Rivera seemed different. He had retained his dignity despite his circumstances. The workday at Midland ended at 4 p.m. The inmates returned to their cells, the guards filled out their reports, and handed over their cases to the evening shift. Stan always tried to complete all the paperwork neatly. His military background had instilled in him a habit of order and precision. In the evening, back home, Stan reflected on the day that had passed. Working in a prison required constant tension and vigilance. Every prisoner was a potential threat, but at the same time, they were people with their own stories and problems. Connor tried to maintain a professional distance, but sometimes he was curious to learn more about the people he watched every day. Adam Rivera spent his evenings in his cell reading books from the prison library or letters from his sister, the only relative who kept in touch with him. His mother died a year after his arrest, never waiting for her son's release. This loss changed Adam. He became more withdrawn, but also more determined to change his life after his release. Midland Prison lived by its own rules, where everyone knew their place and role. Staff and prisoners coexisted within strict rules, but human emotions and needs were not abolished. Sometimes these worlds intersected in ways that no one could predict. November brought the first cold weather to Midland. The old building's heating system was uneven, creating uncomfortable conditions in some parts of the prison. The laundry room where Adam Rivera worked was one of the coldest places. The high ceilings and large windows did not retain heat well. On Tuesday morning, Stan Connor was conducting his routine inspection of the inmates' workplaces. In the laundry room, he noticed that several inmates were working in extra clothing over their uniforms, which technically violated the dress code. Adam was washing bedding in only a standard shirt, despite the apparent cold. "Rivera," Stan called out, coming closer. "Why aren't you wearing extra clothing like the others?" Adam turned around without stopping his work. "I didn't want to break the rules without permission, Officer Connor. Last time you gave me a hint about the uniform, so I decided to be more careful." Connor felt a twinge of guilt. His comment about the stain on the shirt was fair, but now the prisoner was freezing because of his excessive caution. "I see. In these conditions, you are allowed to wear a sweater over your shirt. This is an exception to the rules in low temperatures." "Thanks for the clarification," Adam replied, but didn't move. "Do you have a sweater?" Stan asked. "I did, but I gave it to my cellmate. He's been sick for 3 days, but they won't take him to the infirmary. They say it's just a common cold." Connor was aware of this issue. The prison infirmary was overloaded, and minor illnesses were often ignored. "What's his last name?" "Johnson, cell 247. He's had a fever for several days." Stan made a note in his notebook. Officially, he couldn't influence the medical staff's decisions, but he knew that the laundry supervisor kept spare clothes for such cases. "Come see me after your shift. We'll find you something warm." Adam froze for a moment, surprised by such concern. In 4 years of imprisonment, the guards had rarely shown personal concern. "Thank you, Officer Connor." After work, Stan did indeed find an extra sweater for Adam from the supplies. They met in the hallway near the laundry room when most of the inmates were already in their cells. "Here," Connor said, handing him a gray wool sweater. "Bring it back tomorrow if it gets warmer." "Thank you." Adam took the garment, and for a moment their fingers touched. Both pulled their hands away, but the contact was noticed. "It's not often you meet such considerate guards." "Just doing my job," Stan replied, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "No, it's more than a job. You could have written a report on Johnson for violating the dress code or ignored the situation. But you helped." Stan felt a strange excitement at the prisoner's words. All people deserve to be treated humanely. "Not everyone thinks that way," Adam remarked, looking intently at the guard. "You have kind eyes, Officer Connor." "That's rare around here." Connor quickly looked away, feeling unexpectedly confused. "Get back to your cell, roll call is coming up." That evening, Stan drove home in a strange mood. Adam's words about kind eyes swirled in his head, causing mixed feelings. Over the years of working in prison, he had learned to maintain emotional distance, but something about River pierced his professional armor. His father, Thomas Connor, was waiting for him at home. The retired sergeant sat at the kitchen table with the evening paper and a mug of coffee. His mother was cooking dinner, humming an old song from the radio. "How's work, son?" Thomas asked, without looking up from the paper. "Same as usual. No incidents," Stan replied, taking off his uniform jacket. "Good. Order is the foundation of everything. Remember that you represent not only yourself, but our family." His father repeated these words regularly. Thomas Connor was proud of his military service and raised his son to believe that honor and reputation were paramount. He took any stain on the family's reputation as a personal insult. "Stan, come sit down for dinner," his mother called. "I made your favorite meat." Over dinner, his parents discussed town news, weekend plans, and the health of their neighbors. Stan listened half-heartedly, thinking about work. More specifically, about Adam River. Something about the prisoner caught his attention. Perhaps the intelligence that slipped through in conversation, or the dignity he maintained in difficult circumstances. "Stan, are you listening?" His father's voice brought him back to reality. "Sorry, I'm tired." "What were you talking about?" "About how it's time to think about a family. You're almost 30. It's time to get married. The miller's daughter is a good girl from a decent family." Stan felt a familiar tension. The topic of marriage came up regularly, and each time he found excuses. "Dad, I'm focused on my career right now, maybe in a couple of years." "A career is good, But a man should have a family. What will people think of a bachelor your age? Stan knew exactly what people in their conservative town would think. Suspicion, gossip, condemnation. His orientation was a secret he carefully hid even from himself. In the army, he had learned to suppress any feelings for men by focusing on his duties. "I'll find the right girl when I'm ready," he replied cautiously. After dinner, Stan locked himself in his room, but sleep would not come. His thoughts kept returning to Adam, to his grateful look, to the touch of his fingers as he handed him the sweater. Connor tried to convince himself that it was just professional sympathy. But deep down, he knew something was changing. The next day, a minor incident occurred in the prison. During lunch break, two inmates from different cells got into a conflict over their place in the food line. The situation quickly escalated, and other inmates began to take sides. Sten was on duty in the dining hall and immediately noticed the tension. According to protocol, he should have called for backup and isolated the instigators, but that could have led to serious disciplinary action for those involved. Adam sat at the next table and watched the events unfold. When one of the combatants reached for a plastic fork, clearly intending to use it as a weapon, Rivera stood up and approached the disputants. "Hey, Thompson," he said to the more aggressive inmate. "Remember you owe me for helping you with that letter last year? Consider us even if you cool down right now." Thompson turned around, still angry, but his respect for Adam made him think twice. In the prison hierarchy, Rivera's opinion carried weight. "Officer Connor is a good man," Adam continued, glancing at Stan. "It's not worth causing him trouble over nothing. Besides, tomorrow is Friday, almost the weekend." The logic worked. Thompson put down his fork and muttered an apology. The other participant in the conflict also backed down, and the tension eased. The prisoners returned to their seats, and Stan felt relieved and grateful. After lunch, he approached Adam, who was clearing his table. "Thanks for your help in the dining hall," Connor said quietly. "You prevented some serious trouble." "You're welcome." Thompson's hot-headed, but he's not a bad guy. Sometimes he just needs someone to cool him down. "You have authority among the other prisoners." Adam shrugged. "It's important to be fair here. People can tell when they're being treated fairly." "Just like the guards," Stan remarked, and their eyes met. For a moment, a silence full of unspoken meaning hung between them. Both understood that their interaction went beyond the standard guard-inmate relationship, but neither dared to admit it. "I have to get to work," Adam said, breaking the silence. "Of course. See you at the evening check." In the days that followed, their interactions became more frequent and informal. Stan found reasons to pass by the laundry room more often than usual, and Adam always found time for a quick chat. They discussed the weather, news from radio broadcasts, and books from the prison library. Gradually, Stan learned more about Adam's past. Adam told him about his work as a builder, his sick mother, for whom he had decided to commit a crime, and his plans after his release. In turn, Connor shared his memories of military service and the difficulties of adapting to civilian life. "The Army teaches you a lot," Adam remarked one day. "Discipline, responsibility, camaraderie. But civilian life requires different skills." "Yes, that's true. Sometimes it seems that everything was easier in the Army. Clear orders, clear goals. Here, you have to decide for yourself what is right and what is wrong." Stan nodded, feeling that Adam understood him better than most people. The thought was both comforting and frightening. One evening, during his last round before the changing of the guard, Stan stopped at Adam's cell. The prisoner was lying on his bunk with a book. "What are you reading?" the guard asked. "Hemingway, A Farewell to Arms. Found it in the library." "Good book. I read it in college." "You went to college?" Adam put down the book and sat on the edge of his bunk. 2 years, before the Army. Studied criminology." "Were you planning on becoming a cop?" "I thought about it, but the Army changed my plans." They talked through the bars of the cell for almost half an hour, until Adam's neighbor started complaining about the noise. Stan reluctantly said goodbye and continued his rounds, but his thoughts remained in cell 247. At home, the situation was becoming increasingly tense. Thomas Connor was increasing the pressure to get married, and his mother had started inviting her friends' daughters to family dinners. Sten felt trapped between his family's expectations and his own feelings, which he was finding increasingly difficult to control. "Son, you look tired," his mother remarked one morning. "Maybe you should take some time off?" "I'm fine, Mom. Just a lot of work." "Work shouldn't take over your whole life. You should have other interests, other people." By other people, his mother meant a girlfriend, perhaps a future wife. But Stan was thinking of someone else entirely, a prisoner who made his heart beat faster every time they met. By the end of November, a special bond had formed between Adam and Stan. They didn't admit their feelings even to themselves, but both understood that something important was happening between them. Short conversations, casual glances, and concern for each other went far beyond a professional relationship. One day, Adam received bad news in a letter from his sister. Their mutual friend, who had helped the family during his mother's illness, had died. Stan noticed that the prisoner looked depressed, and after work, he approached his cell. "Everything okay, Rivera?" Adam looked up from the letter. His eyes were filled with sadness. "A good man has died, the only one who didn't turn his back on our family after my arrest." Stan felt the urge to comfort him, but the bars of the cell and their positions created an insurmountable barrier. "I'm sorry. Losing someone close is hard." "Thank you, Officer Connor. It means a lot." That night, both men lay awake, thinking about each other and the feelings that were becoming increasingly difficult to deny. December brought not only cold weather to Midland, but also a special atmosphere of tension. The holidays were approaching, which was always difficult for the inmates, a time of memories of freedom and family. The staff prepared for possible incidents by tightening security measures. Sten Connor noticed that his thoughts were returning more and more often to Adam River. Their daily brief conversations had become an integral part of his workday. The guard found himself deliberately adjusting his patrol route to pass by the laundry room or cell 247 more often. One Thursday in December, an incident occurred that changed the dynamic of their relationship. During the evening shift, Stan was patrolling Block B when he heard muffled sounds of a fight coming from cell 247. Adam's neighbor, Johnson, had finally recovered from his illness, but during that time, he had accumulated debts to other inmates for various services. Now, they had come to collect. Stan quickly opened the cell and saw Adam standing between Johnson and two large inmates from the neighboring block. The situation was critical. Any fight in the cell could lead to serious injuries and disciplinary action for all involved. "What's going on here?" Connor asked loudly as he entered the cell. "Just a little misunderstanding, Officer Connor," Adam replied calmly, keeping his eyes on his opponents. "We were just sorting out the details." One of the visitors, a big guy nicknamed Bear, glared at the guard. "This is none of your business. Rivera Johnson owes us, and we're here to collect." "In my block, it is my business," Adam said firmly. "Johnson was sick, but now he's healthy and ready to work. Give him some time." Stan understood that formally he should arrest all three for violating the rules. Prisoners from other blocks were not allowed to be in cell 247. But he also saw that Adam was trying to resolve the conflict peacefully. "You have 30 seconds to explain the situation, or you're all going to solitary," Connor said, putting his hand on the radio. Bear hesitated. Solitary meant loss of privileges and possible transfer to a maximum security block. "Rivera, are you responsible for Johnson?" Adam nodded. "I am. He'll pay off his debt before New Year's." "Good. But if he doesn't, we'll deal with you." The aggressors left, and Stan remained in the cell with Adam and Johnson. The younger inmate was trembling with fear and gratitude. "Thanks, Rivera. I didn't know they were coming today," Johnson muttered. "Now you know." And remember, you have 2 weeks, Adam said sternly. After Johnson lay down on his bunk, Stan moved closer to Adam. You've taken on a big responsibility. Johnson is weak, but he's not a bad man. He just got into a difficult situation. What if he can't pay his debt? Adam looked at the guard intently. Then I'll have to solve the problem myself. That could be dangerous. Everything is dangerous here, Officer Connor. But sometimes you have to take risks for the right things. There was a hint in Adam's words that did not escape Stan. The guard felt a spark of understanding pass between them. Be careful, Connor said quietly. Will you? Adam replied, and there was an intimate note in his voice that made Sten's heart beat faster. The next day, something happened that brought them even closer together. During his lunch break, Sten was patrolling the corridors when he noticed one of the prisoners passing something to Adam. By the rules, he should have intervened immediately and conducted a search, but instead, he watched from around the corner. Adam received a small package and quickly hid it in his pocket. Stan waited until the prisoners had dispersed and approached River. "Show me what they gave you," he said in an official tone. Adam did not try to deny it. He took a small paper bag of cocoa powder out of his pocket. "Contraband," Stan stated. "That's a violation that could land you in solitary." "I understand," Adam replied calmly. "But today is the anniversary of my mother's death. She loved hot chocolate. I wanted to have a cup in her memory." Stan felt a lump in his throat. He remembered Adam talking about his mother, who had died while he was in prison. "Where were you planning to make it?" "There's hot water in the laundry room, after work, when no one's around." Connor looked around, made sure no one could see them, and held out his hand. "Give it here." Adam handed over the packet, expecting the guard to confiscate it. Instead, Stan slipped the cocoa into his own pocket. "I'm doing laundry room inspection at 7:30 tonight. Make sure no one is there but you." Adam looked at the guard in surprise. "Officer Connor." "Don't say anything, just be there." That evening, Stan did indeed come to the laundry room, where Adam was sorting clean laundry. The guard brought a thermos of hot water and 2 plastic cups. "I can't let you drink this alone," he said, taking out the cocoa. They sat on boxes of laundry, sipping hot chocolate and talking about Adam's mother, about loss, about how important it is to remember loved ones. The conversation was quiet, intimate, full of mutual understanding. "Thank you," Adam said when they finished their chocolate. "It means more than you can imagine." "I understand what it means to lose someone close," Stan replied. When Adam leaned down to put the cup on the floor, their faces were very close. For a moment, time stood still. Stan could feel the prisoner's breath, see the golden sparks in his dark eyes. There was a tension between them that was impossible to ignore. "Stan," Adam said quietly, calling the guard by name for the first time. Connor pulled away abruptly, as if he had been electrocuted. "I have to go. Finish up here and go back to your cell." He quickly gathered the cups and left the laundry room, leaving Adam alone. His heart was beating so hard that he was afraid someone would hear it. From that day on, their relationship moved to a new level. Adam no longer called Stan Officer Connor in private conversations, and Stan allowed himself minor breaches of protocol. He brought Adam books from the city library, passed on news from the outside world, and sometimes lingered at cell 247 longer than he was supposed to. But with closeness came risk. Other guards began to notice Stan's special attention to a certain prisoner. Captain Ron Hayes once made a comment to him. "Connor, keep your distance from the prisoners. Too close a relationship can lead to problems." "Understood, sir. I'm just maintaining discipline through mutual respect." "Fine, but remember, they are prisoners, not your friends." This conversation alarmed Stan. He understood that he was walking a fine line, but he couldn't stop. Adam had become a source of emotions that he had suppressed his entire life. Adam also noticed changes in the behavior of the other guards. Some began to treat him with suspicion, others with envy. He understood that his special relationship with Sten gave him certain advantages, and he gradually began to take advantage of them. At first, it was small things: extra time in the library, better portions in the dining hall, leniency for minor violations of the rules. Sten didn't notice how he was gradually making exceptions for Adam that he wouldn't make for other prisoners. In mid-January, the situation changed dramatically. Adam approached Stan during the evening rounds with a serious expression on his face. "I need to talk to you, in private." Stan looked around and nodded toward the empty attorney meeting room. It was risky, but Adam's tone indicated the importance of the conversation. "What's going on?" Connor asked when they were alone. "I'm applying for early release. I need your support." Stan felt a chill in his stomach. "Adam, I can't influence the parole board's decisions." "You can. Your recommendation will carry weight. You can write that I'm a model prisoner, that I participate in rehabilitation programs, that I help maintain order. It has to be based on facts." "Facts can be interpreted," Adam interrupted. "You know I've changed. You know I deserve a second chance." Stan hesitated. On the one hand, he truly believed in Adam's sincere remorse. On the other hand, he understood that a positive recommendation for an inmate with whom he had a special relationship could arouse suspicion. "Adam, this is difficult. I need time to think about it." "There's no time," Rivera said sharply. "The application must be submitted by the end of the month. After that, the next opportunity will be a year from now." "I understand, but—" "Stan," Adam's voice softened, but there was a steely edge to it. "We've been through a lot together. You risked your career for me, and I never betrayed your trust. Don't I deserve your help?" Connor felt himself being backed into a corner. "This isn't a question of merit. It's a question of ethics and rules." "Rules?" Adam smirked. "We've already broken half the rules in this prison. Or have you forgotten our evening conversations? The books you brought me? The chocolate in memory of my mother?" Stan's heart beat faster. For the first time in all their interactions, he heard a threat in Adam's voice. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm reminding you of our relationship, of how it will look to your superiors if it becomes known." Sten felt the world crumbling around him. "Adam, don't do this. I don't want to hurt anyone, but my freedom is more important than anything else. You can help me get it legally, or I'll find other ways." "What exactly do you mean?" Adam paused, letting his words sink in. "Your father's in the military, right? Your family is very religious? What will they think when they find out you spend your evenings in intimate conversations with a male prisoner? That you bring him gifts, break the rules for him?" Stan felt a chill spread through his body. "There's nothing inappropriate between us." "How can you prove that? Who will believe you when I tell them how you looked at me? How we sat together in the laundry room? How you called me by my name? You're going to ruin my life. I'm offering to save it. One document, a positive reference, and all our secrets remain between us. You keep your job, I get my freedom, everyone's happy." Stan realized he was trapped. Adam was using their closeness as a weapon, turning what seemed like genuine feelings into a tool for blackmail. "I need time to think," he said hoarsely. "You have 3 days. On Friday, I'm filing the paperwork. With or without your reference, it's up to you." Stan left the office feeling betrayed and used. The man who had been a source of forbidden emotions and secret intimacy for him turned out to be a cold-blooded manipulator, willing to destroy his life for his own benefit. The next 3 days were torture for Connor. He avoided meeting Adam, but felt his gaze during every round. At home, his father continued to talk about the importance of reputation and family honor, unaware of how painful these words were for his son. On Thursday evening, Stan realized there was no way out. Refusal meant scandal, loss of work, and shame for the family. Agreement meant complicity in corruption and complete dependence on a man who had already betrayed him once. The Friday night shift on January 26, 2024, began for Stan Connor as the most difficult of his entire career at Midland. There were only a few hours left before the early release documents were submitted, and Adam was waiting for the final decision. Connor spent a sleepless night, tormented by the choice between his career and his moral principles. At 11:30 p.m., Stan was assigned to the night shift in Block B. He usually worked during the day, but asked a colleague to cover for him, citing family circumstances. In reality, he needed time to think and make a final decision regarding Adam's request. Night shifts in prison had a special atmosphere. Most of the inmates were asleep. The corridors were plunged into semi-darkness, and only the duty lights and occasional sounds broke the silence. The staff worked with a minimum number of personnel, 2 guards for the entire block, a supervisor in the central post, and a nurse in the medical station. Stan patrolled the corridors, automatically checking the cells, but his mind was preoccupied with a dilemma. Adam's character reference was in his locker, written but not signed. It was positive, as the prisoner had requested, but every word had been painful to write. He understood that signing this document would make him an accomplice to corruption and a hostage to a man he once trusted. At 1:15 a.m., Stan approached cell 247. Adam was awake, sitting on his bunk, reading by the light of a night lamp. Johnson was snoring on the top bunk. The prisoner looked up and saw the guard behind the bars. "Stan," he called quietly, "have you decided?" Connor was silent, struggling with his emotions. The man he had considered special turned out to be an ordinary criminal, willing to use other people's feelings to achieve his goals. "Time is short," Adam continued. "The documents must be submitted by 9 a.m. "I know," Stan replied hoarsely. "And?" Connor took the keys from his belt. "Come out into the corridor. Let's talk." Adam was surprised by this decision. Releasing a prisoner from his cell at night without a valid reason was a serious breach of protocol. But he got up and quietly left, trying not to wake his neighbor. The hallway was dark, with only dim emergency lights creating islands of light. Stan locked the cell and led Adam to the far end of the block, where the empty cells for new arrivals were located. "The report is ready," Connor said when they stopped at cell 267. Adam's face lit up with relief. "I knew you'd understand. We'll both get what we want." "What do I want?" Stan smiled bitterly. "You destroyed everything we had." "We had nothing," Adam replied sharply. "You're a guard, I'm a prisoner. Everything else is fantasy." "Fantasy?" Stan felt rage boiling up inside him. "What about the evenings in the laundry room, the conversations about life, your words about kind eyes?" "It was a way to get what I wanted. You didn't think I had real feelings for you, did you?" Adam's words sounded like a slap in the face. Steen realized that all their closeness had been a game in which he was a pawn. "Open the cell," Adam said. "I want to show you something." Stan mechanically complied, still digesting what he had heard. Adam entered the empty cell and turned to the guard. "You know what's funny? You really believed you could mean something to someone like me. A guard from a small town who is afraid to admit even to himself who he really is." "Enough," Stan whispered. "Your father will be so proud when he learns the truth about his son. A soldier who raised..." Stan did not remember how he ended up in the cell. Rage clouded his mind, and all the pent-up humiliation, fear, and pain spilled out. His hands closed around Adam's throat before he could finish his sentence. Adam tried to resist, but the element of surprise and the guard's physical advantage proved decisive. The struggle was short and desperate. Rivera tried to scream, but his constricted throat only let out wheezes. He scratched Sten's hands, trying to push him away, but his strength was leaving him with every passing second. Sten pressed down without thinking about the consequences, driven only by the desire to silence the man who had ruined his life. His military training told him the right way to grab someone, and his experience working in a prison told him how to avoid leaving marks on his hands. 3 minutes later, it was all over. Adam Rivera lay on the floor of cell 267, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Sten stood over the body, breathing heavily, gradually realizing the magnitude of what had happened. Reality hit him like an icy wave. He had killed a man, a prisoner under his guard, a man he had once trusted, a crime that would not only destroy his career, but also send him to prison for the rest of his life. Stan left the cell, locked it, and tried to collect his thoughts. He had to act quickly and deliberately. He had a few hours before the morning shift, when Adam's disappearance from cell 247 would be discovered. First, he returned to Adam's cell. Johnson was still sleeping on the top bunk. Stan quietly opened the gate and went inside. He had to make it look like Adam had spent the night in his cell. Connor took the pillow from Adam's bunk and carefully placed it under the blanket, creating the illusion of a sleeping body. In the dim light of the cell, the deception might work until the morning check. Then he gathered the prisoner's personal belongings, a photo of his sister, several letters, a book by Hemingway, anything that could indicate plans for escape or conflict. Returning to cell 267, Stan began to think through a plan to cover up the murder. The body had to be moved, but where? The prison was equipped with CCTV cameras, and any movement could be recorded. Suddenly, it dawned on him. In the basement of the building was an old archive storage room that had not been used for several years. There were no surveillance cameras there, and the guards rarely looked in. Sten returned to the control room and checked the CCTV system. The corridor near cell 267 was in a blind spot between two cameras. It was a stroke of luck that he could use. At 3:45 a.m., he moved Adam's body to the basement. The dead weight was heavy, but his military training helped him cope with the task. In the storage room, he hid the body behind shelves with old documents, where it could remain undiscovered for weeks. Steen spent the last few hours before his shift ending up evidence. He burned the reference he had written for Adam, threw the keys to cell 267 into a trash can outside the prison, and washed his uniform to remove any possible DNA traces. At 8 a.m., the morning shift began. Sten handed over his duties to the day guard, Martinez, trying to look his usual tired self after a night shift. "Anything happen?" Martinez asked as he took the keys. Quiet night. Everyone slept. At 8:30 a.m., during the morning roll call, Adam Rivera's disappearance was discovered. Martinez opened cell 247 and saw that only a pillow under the blanket lay on the lower bunk. Johnson woke up and reported that his neighbor had been in the cell when he fell asleep around midnight. "Code red! Prisoner escape!" Martinez reported over the radio. The prison was immediately locked down. All prisoners were returned to their cells, and staff were put on alert. Captain Ron Hayes arrived within 20 minutes and began coordinating the search. Sten was called back to the prison to testify as the guard on the previous shift. He arrived, feigning surprise and willingness to assist in the investigation. "Connor, you were on duty in Block B last night," Hayes said. "When was the last time you saw Rivera?" "During the 1 o'clock rounds. He was asleep in his cell." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I checked all the cells. All the inmates were accounted for." Hayes frowned. "So the escape happened between 1 a.m. and morning roll call. How could he have gotten out of his cell?" "I don't know, sir. The locks were working, and I had the keys with me the whole shift." At 11 a.m., Detective Sarah Mitchell from the County Police Department arrived at Midland. A 41-year-old woman with 15 years of investigative experience, she specialized in complex criminal cases and had a reputation as a meticulous investigator. Mitchell was of medium height, with short brown hair and attentive gray eyes. She wore a business suit and carried a notebook in which she constantly wrote something down. Her first action was to inspect cell 247 and question Johnson. "Tell me about your neighbor," she asked the prisoner. "Adam is a good man. He didn't look for trouble. He helped others. I don't understand why he would run. He only had a few years left until parole." "Did he talk about plans to escape?" "Never. On the contrary, he was preparing for release through legal means. He read self-help books and planned to find a job." Mitchell wrote down the answers and moved on to interviewing the staff. Stan was among the first she questioned. "Officer Connor, tell me about last night in order." Stan had prepared for this conversation. "I started my shift at 11:30 p.m. I did my first round at midnight, and all the inmates were in their cells. Second round at 1 a.m., everything was fine. Third round at 2 a.m., also no incidents." "Did you know Adam Rivera well?" "As well as the other inmates in my block. He was disciplined and didn't cause any problems." "Did he have any conflicts with other inmates or staff?" "I'm not aware of any such incidents. Rivera kept to himself, but he was respectful to everyone." "And how did the staff treat him?" Stan sensed a trap in the question. "The usual professional attitude. He followed the rules, and we treated him accordingly." The detective looked at him closely. "No special interactions? Complaints? Commendations? Disciplinary actions?" "No, nothing out of the ordinary." Mitchell wrote down the answers, but something about the guard's behavior struck her as odd. Too precise answers, too controlled emotions for a man on whose shift the escape had taken place. The investigation continued throughout Saturday. They searched the entire prison, checked the ventilation and sewage systems, and studied the surveillance camera recordings. No traces of the escape were found. Adam Rivera had vanished into thin air. By Saturday evening, Detective Mitchell began to suspect that this was not an escape. There were too many inconsistencies and too little evidence for a successful escape from a medium-security prison. "Captain Hayes," she said to the head of security, "we need to consider alternative scenarios. Perhaps we are not dealing with an escape." "What do you mean?" "Murder. Someone could have killed Rivera and hidden the body." Hayes turned pale. A murder in prison meant not only tragedy, but also serious problems for the entire prison administration. "We're starting a search for the body," Mitchell decided, "and an in-depth investigation of the staff who had contact with Rivera." Stan Connor spent the weekend in fear and anticipation. He understood that time was working against him. Sooner or later, the body would be found, and then a real murder investigation would begin. But for now, he held on, hoping he could convince everyone of his innocence. The morning of Monday, January 29th, brought the first serious breakthrough in the investigation. Detective Mitchell decided to conduct a more thorough search of the prison building, including rarely used rooms. At 10:30 a.m., the search team went down to the basement of the building. The archive storage room had not been checked over the weekend because it was considered inaccessible to prisoners. But Mitchell was a meticulous investigator and did not overlook a single corner of the building. "Detective, over here," called Officer Rodriguez, who was participating in the search. Behind the shelves of old documents, they found the body of Adam Rivera. The prisoner was lying in a position that indicated a violent death. There were clear signs of strangulation on his neck. "Call the medical examiner and the crime scene investigators," Mitchell ordered. "Don't let anyone into the storage room until the experts arrive." Captain Hayes received the news of the discovery with horror. A murder in prison meant not only tragedy, but also serious problems for the entire institution. "How did the body end up in the basement?" he asked the detective. "Someone from the staff moved it there after the murder. The inmates don't have access to the basement, and they don't know the location of the storage room." The forensic experts arrived around noon. A preliminary examination showed that Adam had died of strangulation. There were few signs of a struggle, indicating that the attack was sudden or that the killer was physically superior. "Time of death is between midnight and 3 a.m. on Friday," the medical examiner reported. "Death was quick. The killer knew what he was doing." Mitchell began compiling a list of suspects. On the night of the murder, there were 6 employees in the prison: 2 guards from blocks A and B, the central post supervisor, a nurse, an electrical technician, and a janitor. The first suspect was the janitor, Vasquez, who had keys to all the rooms, including the basement. But his alibi was ironclad. He had worked in Block A all night and had been seen on surveillance cameras. Technician Jones had been repairing the lighting in Block C and also had camera records of his movements. Nurse Williams had not left the infirmary during her entire shift. That left 2 guards, Martinez from Block A and Connor from Block B. Adam Rivera was held in Block B. Mitchell decided to delve deeper into the relationship between the staff and the murdered inmate. She began interviewing other inmates who knew Adam. Rivera was special, said inmate Thompson. He had a good relationship with some of the guards, especially the one who works in our block. Which one? Connor. They often talked, longer than with other inmates. Other inmates confirmed these observations. A picture of a special relationship between Stan Connor and Adam Rivera gradually emerged. Tuesday brought new evidence. Forensic experts found 267 hairs in cell 267 that did not belong to Adam. DNA analysis would take time, but the detective decided not to wait for the results. She called Stan Connor in for another interview. Officer Connor, I need to clarify some details. Other inmates say you had a special relationship with Adam Rivera. Stan felt his stomach clench. I don't understand what you mean. Long conversations, special attention. Did that go beyond your normal duties? I treated all inmates with the same professionalism. Mitchell took out her notebook. What about Rivera's plans to apply for early release? Did he ask you for your support? Sten's heart beat faster. He may have mentioned it. Many inmates dream of early release. But not all of them ask the guards to write recommendations for them. I didn't write any recommendations. The detective looked at him intently. Officer Connor, our colleagues found burnt remains of paper in an ashtray near your house. Forensic analysis showed that it was an official prisoner recommendation form. Stan turned pale. He thought he had completely destroyed the document, but he didn't take into account that modern forensics can recover even ashes. In addition, Mitchell continued, your neighbors reported that you were burning something in your yard on Friday evening. That was after Rivera disappeared. I was burning old newspapers. Character references aren't written on newspaper, Officer Connor. Stan realized the walls were closing in on him. I want to call my lawyer. That's your right. But first, I want to show you something else. Mitchell took out a plastic bag with a book. This was found in your car, Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms. It has a library stamp from the city library. But what's interesting is that according to the form, the last reader was Adam Rivera. Stan looked at the book he had once brought Adam as a special gift. Another piece of evidence he had forgotten to destroy. Prisoners don't have access to the city library, Officer Connor. Someone on the staff must have brought him this book. On Wednesday morning, the DNA test results came in. The hair from cell 267 belonged to Stan Connor. His fingerprints were also found on the cell door handle, even though records showed he was not supposed to have been there on the night of the murder. Mitchell obtained an arrest warrant. At 2:30 p.m., she arrived at Connor's house accompanied by 2 officers. Stan was sitting on the porch, as if waiting for them to arrive. He had hardly slept in the last few days, tormented by guilt and fear of exposure. Stan Connor, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Adam Rivera, said the detective. You have the right to remain silent. When the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Stan felt a strange sense of relief. The game was over. In the car on the way to the station, he suddenly spoke up. Detective Mitchell, I want to tell the truth. Are you sure you have the right to an attorney? I'm sure. Enough lies. At the station, Stan gave a full statement. He talked about his relationship with Adam, the blackmail, and how the fear of exposure led him to murder. I didn't plan to kill him, he said, staring at the table. But when he said that our whole relationship was a game, that he had used me, I just snapped. Do you understand the seriousness of what you've done? I understand I killed a man, I destroyed my family, I've disgraced the prison system. The news of the guard's arrest for the murder of an inmate spread through the city like wildfire. Thomas Connor received a call from a friend in the police and rushed to the station. It's impossible, he repeated, unable to believe it. My son is not a murderer. Sten's mother cried, unable to understand how her son, raised in the Christian tradition, could have committed such a crime. When they were allowed to see Sten, the conversation was short and painful. "Why, son?" his father asked. "I'm sorry, Dad. I couldn't handle the situation." "What situation are you talking about?" Stan looked at his parents and realized he couldn't tell them the whole truth about his feelings for Adam. It would cause them even more pain. "He blackmailed me. He demanded that I breach my official duties." It was a partial truth, but Thomas Connor accepted it. It was easier for him to believe that his son had been blackmailed than to accept a more complicated reality. An internal investigation began at Midland. Captain Hayes was suspended, and several guards were fired for negligence. The Illinois prison system tightened protocols for interactions between staff and inmates. Detective Mitchell closed the case on Thursday. Her report noted that the murder was the result of an inappropriate relationship between a guard and an inmate that escalated into blackmail and ended in tragedy. "The system failed," she told reporters. "Inadequate supervision of staff and weak security protocols created the conditions for tragedy." Sten Connor was charged with second-degree murder. His lawyer sought a lenient sentence, citing his client's emotional state and the circumstances of the case. At the preliminary hearing, the prosecutor read out the charges. The defendant, taking advantage of his position, developed an inappropriate relationship with an inmate and then, fearing exposure, committed premeditated murder. Sten pleaded guilty, which allowed him to avoid a lengthy trial. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. In his final statement before sentencing, Sten said, "I accept responsibility for my actions. Adam Rivera did not deserve to die, whatever the circumstances. I have destroyed two families, his and mine. I apologize to everyone affected by this tragedy." Adam Rivera's family, represented by his sister, filed a civil suit against the prison system. They received $2.5 million in compensation for negligence in ensuring the safety of the prisoner. Thomas and Mary Connor were forced to sell their house and move to another state. The shame of their son's arrest made their life in their hometown unbearable. Thomas retired early, unable to bear the condemning glances of his colleagues. Midland Prison was reorganized. The new management introduced strict rules for staff interaction with prisoners, mandatory psychological testing of employees, and video surveillance in all areas of the facility. Sten Connor is serving his sentence in a maximum security prison, where he himself has become a prisoner in the system he once served. The circle has closed in a tragic way, reminding us that the line between those who guard and those who are guarded can be thinner than it seems.